Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today what we have is a very interesting pen because I had some plans for this pen when I bought it, and then those plans changed when I found out what I bought. And then I had to do some extra purchases. Anyway, I'll explain it in a moment. This is an original Parker 51 case, box number 270, made in the USA, with the 51 logo on the top. This is circa 1948, and we open it up, and there's the pen I purchased. It says Parker 51 on the inside. This interesting zipper-like edge to the original case, and the case is actually in pretty good shape. This case is for a pen and pencil set, but all I got was the pen. And this pen was advertised as a Parker 51 with a gold-filled cap and a teal body. And in the description, it said that the barrel didn't fit the cap. I figured that meant that the barrel wouldn't fit on the Aerometric filler, and it doesn't. But I thought it was because threads were broken or something like that. And since I was planning on replacing this entire Aerometric filler with a brass converter to make this into a cartridge converter pen, that I didn't care about that. But when I got the pen, I found out that this isn't the barrel that belongs to this pen. This is a standard Parker 51 barrel, and it doesn't fit this pen because this pen is not a standard Parker 51. This is a Parker 51 Demi from 1948, back when they originally called them the Parker 51 Slender. They didn't start calling it the Parker 51 Demi until after 1950. So this is an original Parker 51 Aerometric Demi called the Slender from 1948, late 1948 to early 1950. You can tell that because it says to fill, press ribbed bar firmly 6 times. And it's a shiny chrome sac protector here. After 1950, these were brushed stainless steel and said press 4 times. On these original fillers, this is screwed onto that plastic unit right there, whereas later ones were press fit. So this is 1948 to 1950, and the barrel doesn't belong to the pen. So I had a dilemma. My little converters that I use to convert these into cartridge converter pens won't work with this Demi-sized pen, and I have a Demi with a nice cap, a nice teal hood, what looks like might be a very nice nib, and a good working filling system, but no barrel. Try to find a Demi-size teal barrel from 1948. Good luck. So I went out and bought a 1950 barrel and hood in black for a Demi. So I'd already sunk $50 into this pen, and then I sunk another $25 roughly into a new old Demi barrel and hood. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to convert this pen anymore. We're going to have a spare barrel. We're going to swap out the hood and the barrel with the black, and we're going to clean this pen up and see how it writes, and it will now be a 1948 Parker 51 Demi in black. I had already heated off the section, so it should come off fairly easily. So the section hood, there we go. And of course that original Parker case is very nice as well. There's our ink collector, there's the nib, there's our clutch collar, clutch ring. We don't want to lose that. And we'll put this whole thing in the bath and clean it up, and we'll see whether that sac, that plyglass sac in there, can be cleaned up or it needs replacing, and we'll get that nib out of there and polish it up. There might be a date code on there, I'm not sure. We want to take a closer look at this nib. I'll look at it with my loop, and looks to be in good shape. It's caked with old ink. The nib looks in pretty good shape. I think it's a medium. I'll get really close here and you can see the shape of that nib. And then once we've got it all cleaned up and working perfectly, we'll put the hood back on properly. This won't be proper right now. Well, actually, I almost hit it. What do you know? and we'll put the barrel on and we'll polish up the cap. Now, this isn't the condition that this cap came in. This was fairly tarnished, and I polished it up because I was anxious to try some new polishing compounds and polishing buffer that I've got, and it's looking pretty good. I've done a little bit of polishing on this cap, and let's take a look at what it looked like before and after. And still, as it is, even without the teal cap and hood, a black body and gold-filled cap, a demi-sized from 1948. They were only made from late 1948 to 1950, so it's relatively rare. Parker had demi-sized Parker 51s earlier than this in the Vacumatic style, but the Vacumatic was just a shorter barrel. Everything else was the same size, and the barrel was shorter. What they did when they redesigned the Parker 51 into the Aerometric is they changed a number of things. They lengthened the barrel, so it's longer than the Vacumatic Demi, but they made the whole pen slimmer, and it's smaller than a regular Parker 51. Here's a Parker 51 Aerometric, and you can see that it's capped, it's slightly shorter, and the Demi is slightly shorter as well, uncapped and slightly slimmer. So it's not quite as stubby as the Vacumatic Demi is. And the other thing they changed was the clip. They went from the split arrow blue diamond clip and returned to the clip that they used back in the early 1930s with the Parker Vacumatic. And it's a very handsome pen. So we're going to do some polishing on the cap, pearlescent jewel on the top. The barrel is in pretty good shape. There's some minor scratching. The hood has some minor scratching on it as well, and some wear marks, so we'll polish all of that up and make this pen like new again. We'll let the nib, feed, collector, and sac sit in the pen flush for several minutes. And of course, that staining probably will never go away. I'm going to try a number of things on that. The sac is in really good shape, and these plyglass vinyl sacs last forever almost. And so unless there's any tears or anything in it, I might just keep this sac on here. But the nib has come up very nicely, and so I'm going to try to pull it out. Let's see whether I can get the collector, the breather tube, and the nib assembly out of there. Should just twist out. There we go. There's the breather tube, which is in really good shape. This is generally oxidized like crazy. This is silver, interestingly enough, so we'll make sure that that's clean all the way through. Let's see whether we can get this nib and feed out of here now. It's very brittle also, so you don't want to break that. I'm putting no pressure on it whatsoever. Okay, I got the nib off. Let's take the nib and see if there's a date code on it. At 1949, made in USA. RU for ruthenium, which is the tip. This is 14 karat gold. The RU is for the tipping material, and that nib is in fine shape. And it's not a fine, it is in good shape, and looks like a medium. Very well aligned, lots of tipping material. So that's going to polish up very, very nicely. And I'm not sure about this feed not wanting to come out. This is ebonite, and it's very brittle. It seems to be in there sideways. It should be around this way. Oh, there it's turning. There we go. Okay, so I got that out. A little bit of corrosion down here, but that's normal. I'm going to check to make sure that that's clear all the way through, and we'll polish up that ebonite feed that's showing. And the collector came up very clear after all that dirty ink that was in it. And I'm going to try a few things on this sac to see whether I can at least fade that ink staining. And here's the nib hot off my buffer, and it's looking very shiny. Polish it up on some jeweler's cloth to get all the remaining metal polish off it. I put the nib on the end of a cotton swab where I pulled the cotton bud off to make it easier to control. And there it is. Beautiful. So I let the PVC vinyl sac sit full of bleach for about 24 hours. Bleach doesn't affect PVC. That kind of plastic vinyl is what bleach containers are made of, and it's come up very nicely indeed. There's still some of those purple kind of reddish stripes on there. I don't think I'll ever get those little ribs that are on the inside of this sack clean from that ink. But that's a very strong sack. I've pressure tested it, make sure that there are no leaks, cleaned up all the threads. So we're going to put this back in service again. Let's put the pen back together again, and then we're going to do a writing test. So I'm going to put first the sack protector on it. And again, before 1950, those screwed on. They were pressure fit after 1950. These are the chrome ones that say press firmly 6 times, not 4 times. And then there's the barrel threads and there's the section threads. And we'll take the feed, which I've polished up with some polishing compound, made it very shiny. And we'll put our nib on that feed, and a little bit of gripper material, and just hold those together, and then put it into the collector. Now, I've always been putting these in with the large side on the underside of the nib, but I've since seen that some people are doing the narrow side there. So I'm going to give that a try and push that right in all the way so it can't go anymore. And just check the nib alignment and the feed alignment, make sure it's correct, and it looks good. And then we put that whole thing into the filling assembly. Now that's not going to be correct. When we put the hood on this, well, let's put the barrel on it first. Whoops. Let's put the clutch ring on it first. Clutch ring goes right there. Barrel goes on, and then the hood goes on. Now the hood ends up being misaligned. It's actually exactly 90 degrees misaligned. So I'm going to put my thumb pointing along the point of where the nib needs to go on the hood, or actually my thumb is sitting on the clutch, and I'm going to unscrew the hood without moving my thumb. Now I know that that nib needs to line up roughly with my thumb. Let's give that a try. And I'm off by a bit here. So we're going to move it back, and that's lined up perfectly. Now that nib is looking like it's a little bit deep in there. So I'm going to do that whole operation again without the barrel on it, so the clutch ring goes all the way back. Let's mark where that hood goes to. That's better. Yep. And that's lined perfectly. Now we'll put the barrel on and the cap, and we have a complete pen. And that hood is relatively transparent. You can almost see that white collector through that transparent barrel. Very interesting. Of course, that will go dark once the ink goes through it and you won't see it. Let's give this nib a dip test and see how it writes, and we'll see what kind of work I need to do on it, if any. Okay, so let's see how this thing writes. Got a little Waterman's here, and dip it in the ink, and here we go. This is a Parker 51 1949 Aerometric, and these were called Slender before they were called Demis, and it's a 14 karat gold. I believe it's a medium nib. Let's check the wetness. It's relatively wet and very smooth with a hint of feedback. Almost perfect. Yeah, that's writing very nicely. So I'm guessing, I'll measure this later, but this looks like 0.6 millimeters to me, which is a medium. Yeah, that's very nice. I don't need to do anything to that nib. I might shim it a bit to get a little bit wetter than that, but it's decently wet. So now we can go ahead and polish the rest of this pen. And I'll use my micro mesh on the hood and the barrel. There are no major gouges on this, so I don't need to use my 400 grit sandpaper on it. We'll just polish it up. And then with the cap, I've already done quite a bit of buffing on this, but I think it can be better than this. There's still some corrosion up in here. I'm going to see whether I can clean that up a bit. And there's still some dirt and corrosion in and around that jewel So we'll see how well we can polish this up and get it gleaming. But so far, it's a very handsome looking pen. And just as I finished polishing up the barrel and the hood, and they look marvelous. You look marvelous.
Barbara, you look marvelous. Absolutely marvelous, eh?
I got a package in the mail, and this is another Parker pen ready for restoration. So let's take a look at it before I finish with this one. See the way we can pop it out the top here. There we have it. Yeah, there's quite a bit of corrosion on that, but we'll have to see whether that, oh, it looks like someone's welded it even. We'll have to see whether we can fix that. It's a split arrow diamond, blue diamond clip, and this is a Vacumatic, not an Aerometric, in a lovely gray. And we have a good looking nib. No cracks that I can see, lots of scuffing, and there's no diaphragm in there, I can tell. So a lovely dove gray with a gold-filled cap. And I didn't check to see what the date code might be on this. Made in Canada. No, I can't see a date code on here at all. So I'll have to get that nib off to see. We'll have to see what we can do about that, if anything. Maybe we can polish it up and you won't notice it so much. But it'll be a beautiful pen nonetheless. So let's put that aside. Now I got the barrel and the hood polished up. I was able to get the top finial jewel out and take that clip off and give it a nice rinse and bath. I've polished up this cap, so it's very, very nice. I'm going to buff it a bit more, and I've been able to get the corrosion out of that clip. If you remember, it was sitting here like that, and there was quite a bit of corrosion around that top of the clip, and this could stand with a little bit of a bend as well. So I'm going to bend that in just slightly, just like that, so it is nice and tight when I put it back together. So I'll give this another buff, and then we'll reassemble the pen. So before I put the pen back together again, I wanted to widen that gap a little bit, and so I'm using a gapping tool, 0.004 inches or 0.102 millimeters, and just gently going down that nib slit from the breather hole and letting it sit there for a few minutes just to widen that gap. And I check my alignment, looks good, and I've checked that gap as well. And you might be able to see, let's get closer, you might be able to see that that gap goes all the way up. So it should be wetter. I'm going to give it a little bit of rub that gold tip just a little bit to get finger marks off it and give it a final polish, because hopefully I won't have this pen open again. And I've maintained the position of the feeder nib and the filling mechanism so that the hood will go on properly. Now that the hood's polished up, let's put it on. It should align properly. Now eventually I will put a little bit of shellac on those threads right there to lock that hood down so that it doesn't leak. And I'm just slightly off. Give this a little tweak, put it back on again. Yeah, it needs more than a little tweak. The fine art of trial and error. There we go. Now we can put the barrel back on, and it looks ready to go. We just have to wait for the cap. And while I've got this Vacumatic, Parker 51 standard size, let's take a moment to look at the size comparison between a mid-1940s Vacumatic and a late 1940s, 1949 Aerometric Slender, or Demi. There's the difference. The hood is shorter, the pen is slimmer, the barrel is shorter, and here's the cap for the Vacumatic, and you can see how much thinner that slender Aerometric is. So here we are with the cap all polished up and put back together again, and it's gleaming. All that corrosion is gone. The clip is in perfect shape. There's only one dent on this, and it's underneath the point of that clip where we typically get a dent. But isn't that gorgeous? And the barrel is flawless now. And we want to fill this pen and find out how much a slender or demi-sized Parker 51 Aerometric will hold in terms of ink. Let's measure it with the barrel on. 10 even grams. Press tear, get out some Watermans, and we'll pump it 6 times as per instructions. And we'll put the barrel back on again and wait again. 1.26 milliliters of ink. Not bad for a small pen. Now let's see whether opening those tines up caused it to be a little bit wetter than before. It feels about the same. No, actually, it feels a little smoother than it did up here. A little less feedback. I was thinking that I was going to micro mesh that, but it's ultra smooth now. So a little bit more ink flow will give you a smoother nib. Well, that's now a very, very nice pen. And I'll come back with my thoughts on this resurrection right now. So what are my thoughts about this pen resurrection? Well, I've learned several things about this resurrection. First, always ask questions of the seller before you bid on eBay. I wouldn't have bid on it if I had known that this was a Slender or Demi Parker 51 and that the barrel didn't belong to this pen. Second, the PVC Sacs on these Parker 51s are really resilient. And even though they're prone to ink staining, sitting for 48 hours in bleach brings them back nicely. You won't get all that staining out, but this one cleaned up rather nicely, and better than I expected. Third, the gold-filled caps on these Parker 51s from the 40s and the 1950s are thick and deep. And here's a little lesson on the differences between gold-plated and gold-filled. You can skip this bit if you're adverse to learning anything new. And thanks to the 3 or 4 of you that have stayed. I'll set up some chairs for you to gather around.
Here we are inside. Here's one little chair for one of you and a bigger chair for 2 more to curl up in. For someone who likes to rock, a rocking chair in the middle. Here. Now, look up. Way up. And I'll call Rusty.
In jewelry making, there are 4 categories of gold. Gold plate, gold vermeil, gold filled, and solid gold. Gold plating is when a metal substrate, usually brass, is repeatedly dipped in an electroplate solution with a lump of gold. The gold is bonded with the metal substrate when the current is applied. Gold vermeil uses the same process, but the gold is applied in a layer thicker than 2 microns, and the substrate is usually silver. Gold filled is composed of several layers where the gold alloy is permanently bonded to a brass or sterling silver core, utilizing both heat and pressure. The biggest difference between gold filled and gold vermeil is that gold filled will never lose its golden hue, since the gold is permanently bonded with the base metal. Solid gold is gold of various percentages of purity. The most common carat values are 10K, 14K, 18K, and 24K, which is the purest form of gold. And you'll often see a number next to the carat marking on nibs and things like that, such as 585 next to 14K. This is the percentage of pure gold in the object. In the case of 14 karat gold, it's 58.5% pure gold. The remaining 41.5% is made up of other metals, such as copper, silver, or nickel. For the hardware on fountain pens, it's important to find out if it's gold-plated or gold-filled before you try polishing it. It's very easy to polish right through the gold to the brass substrate on the nib, cap, barrel, clip, or rings of a gold-plated pen. In the golden years of Parker Pens of Janesville, Wisconsin, they were making top-quality fountain pens with top-quality materials, and this cap and clip are testaments to that quality. This pen is 76 years old, and the solid gold nib and gold-filled cap and clip are examples of how well made this little pen was in 1949. It may be black and gold now instead of teal and gold, but it is beautiful and will probably work well for another 76 years. And unfortunately, this one is not for sale, as I have gifted it to my wife for Valentine's Day. She wrote with it, loves the smooth line it makes, and it fits nicely into her hand. And there you have it. That just leaves it for me to say, thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.